His wife said, "His presence torments me, I wish he would disappear forever," and then he truly vanished. What happened next? He was a man who built his life around love, pouring every ounce of devotion into the woman he married, his loyalty, his sacrifices, his endless patience. To the world, they looked like a picture of stability, a couple living the dream of comfort and companionship. But behind the polished surface, the truth was rotting. His wife had grown cold, her eyes carrying irritation every time he walked into the room, her tone sharp with unspoken contempt. The husband, blinded by his own commitment, ignored the late-night phone calls, the muffled laughter behind closed doors, and the growing distance that hollowed their home. Until one night, the illusion shattered, he overheard her laughing with another man, her voice dripping with disdain as she confessed, "His presence irritates me. I wish he'd disappear forever." In that moment, his world collapsed. This was no longer a marriage, but the beginning of a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and a man's quiet decision to vanish in a way she would never forget. From the outside, theirs was the kind of life people admired, even envied, a picture-perfect marriage framed in stability and comfort. They lived in a beautiful home, drove a car that symbolized success, and were always dressed as though they had stepped out of a glossy magazine spread. To friends and neighbors, the husband seemed blessed, a loyal wife by his side, a life free of chaos, and a love story that looked solid and unshakable. Every morning he woke up before the sun, quietly preparing her favorite breakfast toast, slightly golden, coffee made just the way she liked, with a hint of cream and no sugar. He would kiss her forehead softly, whispering promises of a bright future, before stepping out into the world to work long hours, all with the belief that his sacrifices were building the foundation of her happiness. People often complimented him on his devotion, and he smiled with humility, never revealing how little appreciation he received in return. But inside the polished walls of that home, reality was painfully different. His wife had grown restless, her affection fading like the echo of a song once loved but long forgotten. Her eyes, once bright with warmth, now followed him with irritation, as though his very presence suffocated her. She had begun to measure him not by his loyalty or his devotion, but by what he lacked: wealth, excitement, and the kind of luxury she secretly desired. His words of love bounced off the walls of indifference. His thoughtful gestures went unnoticed. His efforts to bridge the growing emotional chasm only pushed her further away. Each evening, when he returned from work, exhausted yet eager to spend time with her, she greeted him with a cold glance, if she bothered to greet him at all. At dinner, silence stretched longer than conversations, and when she did speak, it was often to criticize or mock. To her, he had become invisible and uninvited guest in his own home, tolerated but never truly seen. And while he clung desperately to the fading dream of their love, telling himself that seasons of marriage had ups and downs, she had already drifted beyond the point of return. In her heart, she no longer saw him as her partner, but as a burden, a dull presence that stole the air she wanted to breathe. To the world, their marriage was flawless. But within the four walls of their home, it was already broken. He just hadn't realized how deep the cracks had grown. It was late one evening when the truth finally broke through the fragile illusions he had built around himself. He had returned home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise her with dinner from her favorite restaurant, a small gesture to rekindle even a flicker of the love he believed still lingered between them. As he stepped quietly into the house, he noticed the lights dim, the air thick with the faint scent of her perfume, and her laughter soft, playful, but not meant for him. Drawn by the sound, he moved closer to the bedroom door, left slightly ajar. And there she was, lying comfortably on the bed with her phone pressed to her ear, her voice dripping with sweetness he had not heard directed at him in years. He froze, every nerve in his body alert, as she giggled like a teenager in love, speaking to someone she clearly adored. And then the words came, cruel and careless, each syllable striking him harder than any blade. "His presence irritates me. I can't stand living with him anymore. I wish he'd just disappear forever." She said it lightly, as though wishing away a piece of furniture she no longer wanted, and then laughed again, not realizing her husband was standing just beyond the doorway, hearing every poisonous word. In that instant, his world shattered. The trust, the sacrifices, the countless nights of hard work, all dismissed with a cruel wish from the woman he had loved more than life itself. His heart pounded painfully against his chest, not from anger, but from the hollow emptiness spreading through him. The betrayal wasn't just in her infidelity. It was in the contempt, the casual cruelty of treating him as though he were nothing more than a nuisance. He wanted to storm into the room, to shout, to demand answers, to rage at the injustice of it all, but instead he stood frozen, paralyzed by heartbreak. And a chilling realization crept over him. There was nothing left to fight for. In that silence, something inside him shifted. The man who had once clung desperately to love began to let go, not with fury, but with a cold, deliberate calm. Her laughter echoed through the hallway, sharp and merciless, and with every sound he felt his resolve harden. She had wished for his disappearance, and soon he would give her exactly what she asked for, in a way that would haunt her for the rest of her life. That night, after hearing the cruel words that destroyed the last remnants of his faith, he did not scream, he did not break, and he did not confront her. Instead, he walked away from the door as silently as he had approached it, his face pale, but his mind sharper than it had ever been. The world he thought he knew was gone, and in its place a cold clarity settled into his heart. He realized that anger would give her power, confrontation would give her satisfaction, and staying would give her the chance to continue mocking his existence. No, if she wished him gone, then gone he would be, but on his terms. From that very night he began to weave a plan that was not rushed by fury, but guided by patience, calculation, and a strange, almost frightening calm. Each morning he played his role, perfectly greeting her with a faint smile, pretending not to notice her rolling eyes, going to work as though nothing had changed. But behind this mask, he was dismantling their life piece by piece. He began by quietly moving his personal documents, bank details, and identification papers into a small locked case that she never saw. Then he transferred funds from their joint accounts, little by little, in amounts so subtle that no suspicion would rise, funneling it into a new account she knew nothing about. At work, he requested extra shifts, not to earn for her anymore, but to accumulate enough to walk away without a trace. He sold small valuables, an old watch, a rare book collection, anything that could turn into untraceable cash. Each evening, when she texted her lover behind closed doors, he sat in the living room with a notebook, drafting the blueprint of his exit. He calculated how much time she would be gone on her so-called solo vacation, cross-checked rental storage units where he could place the furniture and items he chose to keep, and contacted a discreet buyer for the car under the guise of an upgrade. Even the house, their supposed sanctuary, was no longer untouchable. He began negotiating its quiet sale, knowing full well that by the time she came back, the very walls she mocked him within would no longer belong to her. Through it all, he spoke little, moved cautiously, and hid his intentions under the blanket of routine, while inside he carried the weight of a storm she never saw coming. And with every step of the plan, he felt the heaviness of her words, the humiliation, the betrayal turn into fuel for his resolve. This was no longer about heartbreak. This was about erasing himself from her world so completely that when she returned, she would feel the emptiness of his absence in every corner, in every detail, in every lost possession. She had wished him gone, and he was about to vanish so thoroughly that her life would collapse into ruins built by her own careless cruelty. She left with a smile sharpened by secret certainty, masquerading excitement as liberation. 3 weeks of sunlit selfies, lavish dinners, and whispered promises from a man who fed her hunger for novelty. And while she collected moments meant to validate her escape, he moved like a shadow, rearranging the life she'd taken for granted. On the day she booked her flight, she packed not only dresses and shoes, but a quiet conviction that everything would resume exactly where she'd left it, only brighter, because she planned to return richer in thrill and less burdened by the man she had proclaimed to detest. He watched her go from the porch with an unreadable face, kissed her forehead as if nothing had been said, and in the hush between the car's departure and the slam of the gate, the last threads of their shared life began to be rewoven into something else entirely. The first clue was subtle. Small notes of absence, her favorite sweater missing from the closet. A box of keepsakes gone from the shelf, nothing drastic enough to alarm in isolation. Yet each removal felt like a careful erasure of memory. Then came the calls she made from exotic locales, laughing clips and staged joy that failed to touch the hollow she had left behind. He answered politely once, twice, then stopped returning calls altogether, letting the silence do what words could not. While she posted paradise, he finalized arrangements that would sever the practical ties between them. He signed papers with quiet signatures, handed over keys to strangers who promised discretion, and moved important documents into secure storage under a name she would not recognize. He never flaunted his actions. Instead, he cultivated the illusion of normalcy, cleaning the house, paying bills, and pretending to wait. When the 3 weeks ended and the plane's wheels kissed the runway, she returned not to a battlefield, but to a meticulously staged absence that knocked the wind out of her in the first breath. The driveway was empty of their car. The garage door stood closed and locked. And through the front window, the living room looked like someone else's, furniture gone. Shelves hollowed, photographs missing or replaced by blank frames. Her key still worked, but the lock clicked to nothing that felt like home. Inside, the air was too still, heavy with a silence that pressed around her like a judgment. She called his name until her voice broke. No reply. She searched rooms as if scavenging for a clue, flinging open closets and cabinets, each revelation worse than the last bank statements with new names. Utility notices redirected, the insurance policy amended. On the coffee table lay a single envelope, unadorned and deliberate. Her hands trembled as she opened it, unfolded the paper within, and read words penned in a hand she had once kissed goodnight. A few sentences, clear and unembellished, that cut through denial and pretense. He wrote of the laughter he had once answered, of promises strained to dust, and how her wish voiced with contempt had become the map for his leaving. No threats, no gloating, only the matter-of-fact truth that he had removed himself from their shared life, leaving her to inhabit the ruins of choices she had made. In that instant, the adrenaline of betrayal gave way to a different horror, the realization that the life she had tried to escape had been dismantled, not by accident but by design. And with each missing item and altered document, she felt the full weight of her own cruelty returning to settle upon her like a verdict. Her fingers trembled as she held the letter, eyes scanning over the words again and again, as if repetition could change what was written, as if denial could undo the reality that had unfolded in her absence. The lines were short, simple, and without anger, yet each sentence carried the weight of a man's broken soul and the quiet strength of his resolve. He had not cursed her, he had not begged for her love, nor had he accused her of cruelty. Instead, he had given her exactly what she wanted. "You said you wished I would disappear," the note read, "and now your wish has come true. You will never see me again, not because I was weak, but because I finally understood I deserved better than being unwanted." Those words burned hotter than rage ever could, because they were not the words of defeat, but of finality. He had walked away with dignity, leaving her not with the satisfaction of victory, but with the crushing weight of regret. She staggered through the hollow house, her footsteps echoing against bare floors where laughter and arguments had once lived, her voice cracking as she whispered his name into rooms that no longer remembered it. Every corner reminded her not of his presence, but of his absence, the empty hooks where his coats once hung, the silent kitchen where his hands once prepared her meals, the void where their shared life had been carefully erased. For the first time, she understood the depth of what she had thrown away. And the irony was unbearable. She had wanted freedom, but what she found was loneliness. She had wished for his disappearance, but what vanished instead was her stability, her security, and the one person who had loved her beyond reason. Her wealthy lover's voice in her memory suddenly sounded shallow, meaningless against the silence that surrounded her now. She realized too late that money could not buy loyalty, that excitement could not replace devotion, and that the heart she had mocked was the very foundation of the life she had so carelessly dismantled. Sitting on the cold floor with the letter pressed to her chest, she wept not for the man she betrayed, but for herself, for the emptiness she had summoned with her own cruel words. And as her tears stained the paper, a truth settled deep into her soul. One she would carry like a scar for the rest of her life. Love is not infinite. Patience is not eternal, and when you take someone's devotion for granted, you risk losing not just them, but everything they ever built around you. His silence had spoken louder than any confrontation. His absence had carved a wound deeper than any presence ever could, and in the end, the greatest punishment was not that he was gone, it was that she remained, trapped in the ruins of her own making, haunted forever by the echo of the wish that had finally come true. Sometimes the cruelest wounds are not carved by knives, but by careless words spoken without thought. She wished for his disappearance, and he gave her exactly what she asked for. But in losing him, she lost far more: the love, the loyalty, and the life that could never be replaced. Remember this: love is fragile, and once broken, it rarely returns. Never take for granted the heart that beats for you, because when it stops, the silence will be louder than anything you've ever known.